She transferred millions out of reach before she blew out her birthday candles. And the man who thought he was selling her grandmother's cabin had already signed a contract on land he never owned.
Before we tell you what happened next, hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time in the comments. We love knowing where you're listening from. Now let's take you back 6 years. The summer Iris Tremaine turned 12, her grandfather Harold picked her up in his truck and drove 40 minutes without explaining where they were going. Cedar Lake. The cabin sat back from the water, surrounded by white pines so tall they blocked the afternoon sun. The porch sagged on one side. The screen door didn't latch right. It smelled like wood smoke and old books and something sweet no one could ever quite name. "Grab the other end," Harold said, lifting a rotted fence rail. She did. They spent the morning replacing 3 posts along the south side. He didn't rush her. He showed her how to press her thumb into the grain to check for soft spots. If it gives, he told her, it's done. Inside, her grandmother Vivian had iced tea and sandwiches waiting on the kitchen table, the one Harold built himself the year they got married. Vivian was reading on the porch when Iris came out. She patted the chair beside her without looking up. They sat and watched the lake until the light turned gold. "This cabin stays in the family," Harold told her that evening, wiping sawdust off his hands. "But family isn't always blood, Iris. Family is whoever shows up." She didn't fully understand what he meant. She was 12. She thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. That whole summer, Iris came back to Cedar Lake every weekend. She learned where the water heater leaked, which window stuck, how to bleed the radiator. In October, Vivian taught her to organize the bookshelves by color because it made the room feel warmer. Harold showed her the property line markers, old iron stakes he'd hammered in himself. She didn't know then that her grandfather was already talking to a lawyer about exactly this place, about exactly her. Back home, the air was different. The house in Ridgemont was fine. 3 bedrooms, a yard that needed mowing, a garage her father Greg used as an office for his building supply store. Fine. Not warm. Just fine. Her sister Kelsey was 10 and had the bigger bedroom, redecorated that spring. Lavender walls, a desk lamp that cost more than Iris's entire bookshelf. Iris's room still had carpet from the previous owners. At dinner one evening, Greg brought up the cabin. "Dad's place is just sitting there losing value," he said, cutting his steak. "Property taxes alone are killing us. We should sell it, reinvest." Their mother, Denise, nodded. Made sense. "Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family," Iris said. Greg laughed. Not a mean laugh. Worse, a dismissive one. "You were 12, Iris." He was being nice. Nobody asked her anything else. The conversation moved to Kelsey's debate trophy. Regional finalist. Very impressive. Denise had already framed the certificate. Iris had won the district science fair 2 weeks earlier. The ribbon was still in her backpack. After dinner, she cleared the plates. On the counter, half hidden under a grocery list, sat a glossy flyer. Ridgeline Development, Lakefront Lots. Premium prices, now acquiring. There was a handwritten phone number in the margin, not her father's handwriting. She put the flyer back exactly where she found it. Upstairs, she sat on her bed and thought about Harold's kitchen table. The one he built with his hands. The one where Vivian set her sandwich without asking what she wanted, because she already knew. She thought about the flyer downstairs. Someone was already measuring her grandparents' home in dollar signs. Harold Tremaine died 2 years later. Iris was 14. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Gray sky, damp grass, folding chairs that sank into the lawn.
She sat in the second row holding his handkerchief, blue plaid, frayed at the edges, smelling faintly of pine. At the reception, she noticed Greg and his brother Wade standing by the dessert table, not eating, talking low. Wade had a folder tucked under his arm. Greg kept nodding. She caught one sentence. "We should move on this before probate gets complicated." They were talking about the cabin. At the funeral, she said nothing. She was 14. She had no power, no voice, and no idea that her grandfather had already accounted for this exact moment. 2 years passed. Iris was 16 when her grandmother Vivian got sick in March and was gone by June. Vivian held Iris's hand the last time she visited. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "The cabin is yours, Iris," she whispered. "Don't let them take it. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma." She squeezed once and closed her eyes. After that funeral, another gray day, same folding chairs, Greg sat at the kitchen table and said to Denise, almost with relief, "Now we can finally sort out the property." That same evening, Wade called. Greg paced the garage with his phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get it moving." His voice was lighter than it had been in weeks. Iris stood in the hallway, holding a glass of water, and she understood something that sat in her chest like a stone. Her grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a clearance. She didn't cry that night. She made a different kind of decision. Between 16 and almost 18, the cabin became Iris's quiet rebellion. Every Saturday morning, she drove out to Cedar Lake in the used Honda she'd bought with babysitting money. She patched the porch screen, replaced the weather stripping on the back door, swept pine needles off the roof because Harold had taught her that's how leaks start. At home, the language shifted. The cabin stopped being Grandpa's place and started being called the family property. Greg said this at dinner, like it had always been true. Wade started showing up more often. Every other Sunday, sometimes with manila folders, sometimes with a laptop open to real estate listings. Iris tried once. "What about Grandma's wish?" "She wanted me to keep it." Denise put down her fork gently, the way she always did before correcting Kelsey's homework. "Your grandma was emotional at the end, sweetie. This is business. Business. That's the word they used for everything that used to be love." By 17, Greg was being more direct. "When you turn 18, we'll figure this out as a family." Iris heard what he meant. He meant his way. One November afternoon, alone at the cabin, she was clearing out the hall closet. Behind a stack of old quilts, she found a sealed envelope, her name on the front in Vivian's handwriting. Inside, a single business card, Margaret Caldwell, attorney at law, and below that, in small print, Twamaine Family Trust. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from recognition. Vivian had left this here for her to find. She knew Iris would be the one cleaning out closets. Not Greg, not Wade. Iris. She slipped the card into her wallet. She didn't call. Not yet. 3 months before Iris's 18th birthday, Margaret Caldwell called first. It was a Thursday evening in February. Iris was doing calculus homework when an unknown local number lit up her screen. "Iris, this is Margaret Caldwell." "I was your grandparents' attorney." Her voice was steady, professional, careful, like someone who had rehearsed the opening. "I need to speak with you before your birthday. There are things you need to know, and there isn't much time." She told Iris to meet her the following Saturday at her office downtown, alone. Iris went. Margaret Caldwell was in her late 50s, silver-haired, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Her office was small, organized, and smelled like old paper and coffee. She opened a folder and set it on the desk between them. "Your grandparents hired me 6 years ago," she said. "They established an irrevocable trust, the cabin, a savings account, and an investment portfolio. Total value approximately $2.1 million, all of it held in the trust. You are the sole beneficiary." Iris felt the room tilt. She kept her voice steady. Why didn't they tell him? Margaret paused. "Your grandfather said, and these are his words, 'My sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt.'" The room was quiet. "There's something else," Margaret continued. "Someone has been making inquiries at the county recorder's office about the cabin's title within the last month." Iris started paying attention after that meeting, not suspiciously, just quietly. The next Sunday, Wade came over for dinner. Afterward, he and Greg disappeared into the garage. The door was open a crack, not enough to see, but enough to hear. Wade's voice came through clearly. "I already signed the purchase agreement with Ridgeline, $450, but we need the title clean before closing." "How do we get it clean?" "Quitclaim deed. Dad's gone, Mom's gone. We're the legal heirs. We quitclaim the property to ourselves, record it, and sell." "Is that legal?" "It's a standard real estate transfer between heirs. Nobody's going to question it." And by the time she's 18, the sale goes through. Done deal. She'll be upset. She'll get over it. We'll give her a cut. 50 grand for college. She should be grateful. Iris stepped back from the garage door. Her hands were cold. Wade had already signed a purchase agreement, $450,000, with a development company for a cabin he didn't own, on land held in a trust he didn't know existed. That night, she texted Margaret 2 words, "They're accelerating." The reply came in 3 minutes. "I expected that. Come see me Saturday. We'll prepare everything you need. Here's what we want to ask you right now. Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself, even when every part of you wanted to speak up? Tell us in the comments. We read them all." Margaret laid out the timeline on a legal pad, drawing lines between dates like a general mapping a campaign. The cabin title was already under the trust. If Wade filed a quitclaim deed, the county recorder should reject it. The chain of title wouldn't match. The property hadn't been in Harold and Vivian's personal names for 6 years. But if he submitted additional documentation, an affidavit of heirship, maybe falsified paperwork, he could create what's called a cloud on title. It wouldn't give him ownership, but it could tie the property up in litigation for a year or more. So Iris had to act first. "You have to act on time," Margaret said. She tapped the calendar. "The moment you turn 18, you're a legal adult. You can formally accept the role of successor beneficiary. Once you sign, I file a lis pendens, a public notice of legal interest at the county recorder's office first thing the next morning. That freezes the title. Nobody can record anything against it. What do I need to do? Show up, sign 1 document. I'll handle the rest." Should she tell her parents? Margaret took off her glasses. "Your grandfather specifically asked me to protect you, Iris, not to negotiate with them." Iris drove home. Greg was in the kitchen, cheerful. "Good news, kiddo. I'm throwing you a birthday party. Whole family, Saturday night. It's a big one. 18. He smiled. Denise smiled. Even Kelsey clapped. Iris smiled too. Her father was planning her birthday party. Her uncle was planning to sell her grandmother's cabin, and Iris was sitting at the kitchen table smiling, because in 9 days she was going to let them think everything was going exactly according to their schedule. Sitting in her room that night, knowing what was coming, was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. Part of her wanted to walk downstairs and just say it. "Dad, I know." But Margaret was right. If she tipped them off, they'd find another way around it. So she stayed quiet, and she waited. 5 days before the birthday, Denise sat down next to Iris on the couch. Her voice was soft, practiced, slightly rehearsed. "Now that you're almost 18, there are some family decisions we should make together." Together. The word landed like a costume. "The cabin costs money to maintain," Denise continued. "Taxes, insurance, repairs. Your dad's business has been struggling, and if we sell, we could pay off the debt and set up a college fund for you and Kelsey. Grandma wanted me to keep it." Denise's expression shifted. A flash of impatience quickly smoothed over. "Your grandma was very sentimental at the end, Iris, but sentiment doesn't pay property taxes." Greg walked in right on cue. Iris wondered if they'd planned it. "I've already talked to a buyer," he said. "Good price, fair deal." "Who's the buyer?" He blinked. "A development company. Wade knows them." "What company?" A longer pause. "Ridgeline something. They're reputable. I'll think about it." Greg patted her shoulder. "That's my girl." He walked away satisfied, like a man who'd just closed a negotiation. That evening, Kelsey knocked on Iris's door. She sat on the edge of the bed, picking at a thread on the comforter. "Mom and Dad keep talking about the cabin at night after I'm supposed to be asleep," she said quietly. "They sound different, like they're planning something, like they're excited but also nervous." Iris pulled the blanket over her sister's feet. "Don't worry about it, Kels." 3 days before the birthday, Wade showed up unannounced. He caught Iris in the driveway, leaning against his car, casual clothes, big smile, like he'd just happened to be in the neighborhood. Nothing Wade Train did was accidental. He sold houses for a living. They sat on the front steps. "Here's the thing, Iris. That lake lot, just the land alone is worth $450. I can get us a deal with a buyer I trust. Fast close, clean paperwork." "What do I get?" $50,000 cash for college." She let the number hang in the air. 50 out of 450. Wade smiled like she'd said something cute. "You're 18, Iris. 50 grand is a lot of money for someone your age." Most kids would jump at that. "Whose name is on the deed, Uncle Wade?" The smile froze. Just for a second. A flicker behind the eyes. A micro-adjustment. Then it was back. "Your grandparents, but they're gone now." "Passes to your dad and me as next of kin. That's not how it works." She knew it. He should have known it. He sold houses for a living. But he was counting on her not knowing. "I'll think about it," she said. Wade stood, brushed off his jeans. "Don't overthink this one, Iris. Opportunities like this don't wait." He drove away. Before he'd even reached the end of the street, he was on the phone. She could see his mouth moving through the driver's window. That night, she texted Margaret again. "They're accelerating." The reply, "Stay the course. 3 more days. 3 more days." The night before her birthday, Iris drove to the cabin alone. The road was quiet. Cedar Lake sat flat and dark under a half moon. The pines along the bank looked like cutouts against the sky. She parked in the gravel patch Harold had leveled himself, walked up the porch steps, second one still creaked, and sat in the chair next to the one that used to be his. The air smelled like rain and pine resin. At midnight, she read the documents Margaret had sent, the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, the beneficiary designation confirmation, a 1-page summary of the trust terms. Everything formatted, flagged with sticky tabs, ready for a single signature. Her signature. Harold used to sit right there and say, Patience isn't weakness, Iris. It's timing. She always thought he was talking about fishing. The tears came without warning. Not a collapse, not a breakdown, just a quiet overflow she let happen. She cried because she wished this were different. She wished her father had taken her fishing at this lake, instead of calculating its resale value. She wished her mother had asked what she wanted, instead of telling her what was practical. She wished she didn't have to sign a legal document at midnight to protect herself from the people who were supposed to protect her. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. She wiped her face, locked the door, drove home, lay down in bed, and set her alarm. In 6 hours, she would turn 18. In 7, her family would find out the cabin was never theirs to take. Her bedroom door was closed. The house was silent. Greg and Denise had gone to bed an hour earlier. Kelsey's light had been off since 10. She opened her laptop and connected to the video call. Margaret appeared in her home office, reading glasses on, desk lamp lit, a stack of papers beside her. Ready? Ready. When the clock hit midnight, Margaret walked her through it one final time, clear and precise. Iris signed the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, one page confirming she was formally receiving the trust her grandparents had created. From that moment forward, every decision about the trust's assets would run through her and Margaret as co-decision makers. Now Margaret said, "I'll go to the county recorder's office and file the lis pendens. Once it's recorded, no one can sell, transfer, or encumber the title while it's active." Iris looked at the signed paper in her hand, her name in ink, her grandparents' names in print above hers. Margaret's voice softened just slightly. "This isn't a trick, Iris. This is your grandfather's last gift. You just had to be old enough to accept it. She was 18. She was the legal beneficiary of the Tremaine family irrevocable trust." And downstairs in the garage, her uncle's quitclaim deed was already a dead document. While Iris was signing upstairs, Wade Tremaine was printing documents. She didn't know this at the time. She pieced it together later, from what the county clerk told Margaret and from what Greg eventually admitted during one of their harder conversations. Here's what happened. While she signed her acceptance form at midnight, Wade printed a quitclaim deed across town in the kitchen of his rented duplex, a one-page form that transfers property rights from one party to another without any warranty of ownership. Legitimate when used correctly, criminal when the person signing it has no rights to transfer. Everything's ready. We file at 9. The recorder's office opens at 8, but I want to make sure Iris is distracted with birthday stuff first. "Are you sure about this?" "They're dead, Greg. We're next of kin. It's simple." It wasn't simple. It was forgery dressed up in standard real estate language. Wade also had a second document open on his laptop. A purchase agreement with Ridgeline Development, LLC. Purchase price, $450,000. Closing date, 30 days after the quitclaim deed was recorded. If he couldn't deliver a clean title within that window, he owed Ridgeline $45,000 in penalties plus damages. He'd signed that agreement 2 months earlier, before the title had even been fully searched. Before he'd verified the property was in the estate at all, he'd assumed it was. He assumed nobody had planned otherwise. Wade had bet nearly $500,000 on a piece of paper that didn't belong to him. In 9 hours, when he walked into the county recorder's office with his quitclaim deed and his confident handshake, he was going to find out the entire chain of title told a different story. The birthday parties started at 4 in the afternoon. The living room was full, maybe 20 people. Neighbors, a few of Greg and Denise's friends from church, 2 of Greg's old business contacts. Kelsey's best friend's family. Nora Beckett from next door to the cabin sat near the window with a glass of lemonade and sharp, watchful eyes. There were balloons, a silver banner that read Happy 18th, a sheet cake from the bakery on Main Street. Iris smiled. She thanked everyone. She opened small gifts, a journal, a gift card, a picture frame. In her jacket pocket, folded into a neat square, sat the signed acceptance form from midnight. She didn't touch it. It was already done. Greg tapped his glass near the cake table.
I just want to say, Iris is officially an adult today. Denise and I are so proud of her. And as a family, we have some exciting plans for the future. He looked at her. Right, Iris? Every face in the room turned. Thanks, Dad, she said. Nothing more.
Greg waited a beat, then laughed it off and raised his glass. The room followed. Conversation resumed. From the corner of her eye, Iris saw Wade by the front door, checking his phone, thumbs moving fast. Nora caught her arm as she passed the window. She leaned in close, smelling of lavender hand cream. Your grandmother would want you to know something, she said quietly. I saw your uncle at the cabin last week with 2 men in suits. They were walking the lot line with a measuring tape. Wade had brought the buyers to the property before he even had the title. That was how confident he was. After the cake was cut and the plates passed around, Greg stood again. This time his voice was louder, more deliberate. The voice of a man who'd been waiting for an audience. Our family has been going through a tough time financially, he announced. Some of you know about the store. It's been hard. Sympathetic murmurs filled the room. But Harold and Vivian, my parents, they left us something. The cabin out at Cedar Lake. And as a family, we've decided to sell it to secure everyone's future. We've decided. The words landed on Iris's skin like cold water. He looked right at her. Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us. Right, sweetheart? The room waited. Every eye found her. Neighbors who'd known her since she was small. Nora with her lemonade. Kelsey half hidden behind the couch. Denise nodding gently. It's what responsible families do, Denise added. We sacrifice for each other. Iris set her fork on her plate. The clink was the only sound in the room. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. Greg's smile stayed fixed. But the muscles around his jaw tightened. She's kidding. Birthday nerves. I'm not kidding. Wade stepped forward from the doorway. Come on, Iris, this isn't the time or the place. She picked up her glass of water, took a slow sip, and set it down. You're right, Uncle Wade. She held his gaze. This isn't the time. Tomorrow morning. Silence. Wade's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't check it. No one in the room moved. The guests left after that. Polite goodbyes, tight smiles. The kind of exits people make when they can feel a storm building inside someone else's house. Within 30 minutes, the living room was down to family, Nora, and 2 neighbors who seemed unsure whether to go or stay. Denise waited until the last near stranger was out the front door, then turned on Iris in the kitchen. Her voice was controlled, but pitched just loud enough to carry. Do you have any idea what your father is going through? She stepped closer. He might lose this house, Iris. Our house. The one you sleep in every night. And you're holding on to a cabin you visit on weekends? I visit every weekend, Mom. That's not the point. Denise pressed her palms flat on the counter. We are a family. Families make decisions together. And if you loved this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer to tell you what to do. The room went still. How do you know about a lawyer? Denise didn't flinch. Wade found the business card in your bag last week. Margaret Caldwell. Who is she, Iris? The stomach drop wasn't from fear. It was from the realization that they'd been going through her things. searching for something to use. Before she could answer, Nora Beckett's voice cut through from the kitchen doorway, even and firm. "That girl has every right to talk to a lawyer, Denise. Vivian would have wanted that. This is a family matter, Nora, please." Nora didn't move. "Vivian was my friend for 40 years, she said. "I think I know what she wanted." The silence between them could have cracked glass. Nora left. The neighbors slipped out behind her. Now it was just the 5 of them.
Greg, Denise, Wade, Kelsey, and Iris. Greg closed the kitchen door. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and folded his hands on the table, like a man about to deliver terms. "Here's what's going to happen, Iris."
His voice was low and deliberate. "Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get your share, a fair share, and we move on as a family." "What's my share?" $50,000. "Out of how much?" Greg didn't answer. Wade filled the gap from the doorway. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Iris looked at her father. "And if I say no?" Greg's jaw set. "If you fight this, you're on your own. No more help with college." No more living under this roof. The kitchen was very quiet. The faucet dripped once. "You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday. I'm asking you to be part of this family." She pushed back from the table, stood. Her voice was steady, even though her hands weren't. "I am part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises." She walked past Wade, past Kelsey, sitting on the stairs with her knees pulled to her chest. And she went upstairs and closed her door. At the county recorder's office. He didn't know that Margaret's deadline was 8. If someone you loved ever prepared something to protect you, even after they were gone, we want to hear about it. Tell us in the comments. The county recorder's office opened its doors, and a clerk in a blue cardigan unlocked the front counter. Margaret Caldwell was the first person through the door. Gray blazer, leather folder, professional and unhurried. She approached the counter, presented 2 documents, a certified copy of the Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust and a Lis Pendens notice, and asked for them to be recorded against the Cedar Lake property. The clerk reviewed the paperwork, checked the existing title records, and stamped it, recorded. From that moment forward, anyone who pulled the title on the Cedar Lake cabin would see it clearly. Notice of pending legal interest. Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust. Margaret Caldwell, trustee. Iris Tremaine, beneficiary. Margaret called. "It's done. The Lis Pendens is recorded. The property is flagged. Whatever they bring in will be rejected on chain of title grounds." Iris was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. Greg was upstairs getting dressed. Denise was making coffee. Normal morning sounds. At 8:30, Greg and Wade came downstairs together. Greg was wearing his business shirt, the one he used to wear to bank meetings. Wade had the folder under his arm. Same folder as always. "We'll be back by lunch," Greg said, grabbing his keys. Iris looked up from her bowl. "Good luck," she said. Greg paused in the doorway. Something in her voice, or maybe something in her face. Then he turned and walked out. She rinsed her cereal bowl, dried it, set it in the cabinet, and she waited. Margaret had stayed at the recorder's office on purpose. Wade approached the counter. He slid the quitclaim deed across with a confident nod. Greg stood behind him, hands in pockets, looking around like they'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The clerk took the document, typed the parcel number into the system, read the screen, typed again. Then she stopped. "I can't record this document, sir." Wade leaned forward. "Excuse me?" "The property title is held under the Tremaine Family Irrevocable Trust, It was recorded in 2020. There's also a lis pendens filed this morning. That's impossible. My parents owned that property. Sir, the deed was transferred to the trust 6 years ago. The chain of title is clear. This quitclaim doesn't match the current ownership record. Greg stepped up beside his brother. There's no trust. Our parents never mentioned a trust. The clerk glanced between them.
I'd recommend you speak with the trustee listed on the filing, a Margaret Caldwell. Wade's hand went flat on the counter, his face drained.
Margaret's name, the name on the business card they'd found in Iris's bag, was now on a public record they couldn't erase. Greg turned to Wade slowly. You said this was simple. I didn't know about any trust. You're a real estate agent, Wade. How did you not check the title first? Wade opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The clerk said evenly, Gentlemen, I'll need you to step outside if there's a disagreement. Margaret, seated in the waiting area near the door, watched them leave. She didn't say a word. Iris was sitting on the porch watching a neighbor's sprinkler arc back and forth across the lawn. What did you do? Greg's voice was tight, shaking. Traffic noise behind him. He was in the parking lot. I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret Caldwell has been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. She counted 3 full arcs of the sprinkler before he spoke again. We'll fight this. You can try, but the trust is irrevocable. Even I can't dissolve it. There's nothing for anyone to undo. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, Dad. I've had 3 months to learn. He hung up. No goodbye. Just a click and dead air. She set her phone on the porch railing. Her hands were shaking, not from anger, not from fear, but from the weight of saying those words to her own father. From knowing that the man who taught her to ride a bike when she was 6 was the same man who had just tried to sell her grandmother's home out from under her. She sat there until the shaking stopped. It took a while. Then her phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. Miss Tremaine, this is Carter Briggs from Ridgeline Development. We need to talk. Carter Briggs spoke the way developers do. Fast, factual, already calculating his next move before the current sentence ended. We have a purchase agreement with Wade Tremaine for the Cedar Lake property. He guaranteed clean title. We've just been informed there's a lis pendens on the parcel. That's correct, Iris said. My uncle does not own that property. He never did. The cabin and the land have been held in an irrevocable trust since 2020. I'm the sole beneficiary. Papers shifting on the other end. He represented himself as the heir. I understand, but representation doesn't create ownership. I'd recommend you discuss this with him and possibly with your own attorney. Another pause, longer this time. Miss Tremaine, is there any possibility of a sale? We'd be prepared to make a competitive offer directly to the trust. The property is not for sale. His voice hardened slightly. Then we'll be pursuing our remedies against Mr. Tremaine. She gave him Margaret's number. Within the hour, Margaret confirmed to Ridgeline's legal team what Iris had already told Carter. The trust was valid. Wade had no authority. The purchase agreement was executed based on a fundamental misrepresentation of ownership. Ridgeline's response was immediate. They were pursuing Wade for breach of contract, the $45,000 penalty clause plus damages. That afternoon, Margaret called with one more piece of information. Her voice was careful but direct. Iris, the quitclaim deed Wade tried to file, it included a notary stamp. I had the recorder's office pull a copy before they rejected it. The stamp doesn't match any registered notary in the county. It appears to be forged. Iris closed her eyes. That's a felony, isn't it? In this state, Margaret said.
Yes, Wade Tremaine hadn't just tried to steal a cabin. Greg came home at 2 in the afternoon. He moved through the front door like a man carrying something invisible and very heavy.
Denise was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, face blotched from what had clearly been an hour of angry crying. Iris sat at the dining table. She didn't get up. Greg sat down across from her and stared at the table for a long time.
I'm going to lose this house, Iris. His voice was flat, emptied out. The bank is on me for $180,000. The store is gone. That cabin was supposed to be our way out. I know you're struggling, Dad. I'm sorry about the business. Then help us. The cabin was never your way out. It was Grandpa and Grandma's gift to me. A gift? He almost laughed. For what? You're 18. What does an 18-year-old need with a lakefront cabin? It's not about what I need.
It's about what they wanted. Denise stepped in from the doorway. They were old, Iris. They weren't thinking clearly at the end. They were thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer 6 years before they died. Greg slammed his palm on the table.
I'll contest the trust. A voice came through Iris's phone. She'd called Margaret before Greg walked in and left the line open on speaker. Not to trap him, to save time. Mr. Tremaine. Margaret's voice was steady and professional. Contesting an irrevocable trust established 6 years before the grantor's deaths, with full legal capacity documented and witnessed, will cost you more in legal fees than the property is worth. I'd strongly advise against it.
The kitchen went silent. The faucet dripped. Greg looked at Iris. Really looked. And for the first time, she saw something she'd never seen in her father's eyes before. Not anger, recognition. 2 hours later, Wade called the house.
Greg picked up in the living room. Iris stood in the hallway, close enough to hear every word through the thin wall. Ridgeline is suing me. Wade's voice was stripped raw. $45,000 in penalties, plus damages.
They're saying I committed fraud. Greg's reply was cold, colder than anything she'd heard from him before. Did you? I thought we owned it. You're a real estate agent. You do title searches for a living. How did you not check? I assumed. You assumed. And now I'm sitting here with nothing because you assumed. You wanted the money too, but I didn't forge a notary stamp, Wade. A long silence. I didn't forge. I just found a stamp. That's forgery. You know that's forgery. Wade's breathing got heavier.
I need a lawyer. So do I. Greg paused. Don't call this house again until you've talked to one. He hung up. Iris heard him sink onto the couch. The springs creaked. Then nothing. She went upstairs. Kelsey's door was open.
She sat on her bed, headphones around her neck, eyes wide. Is Uncle Wade in trouble? Yeah, Kelsey, he is. Is Dad? Iris sat on the edge of her sister's bed. Dad made bad choices. Uncle Wade made worse ones. Kelsey nodded slowly, processing the way 15-year-olds do, not fully understanding. Over the next 3 weeks, the consequences fell like dominoes.
Ridgeline Development filed a civil suit against Wade Tremaine, breach of contract, misrepresentation of title, and demand for the $45,000 penalty, plus $60,000 more in damages and legal costs. Their attorneys sent the complaint by certified mail. Wade signed for it on a Tuesday. The county district attorney's office received a referral from the recorder's office regarding the forged notary stamp. An investigator was assigned. Wade's real estate license was suspended pending the outcome. His income, such as it was, stopped. Word traveled.
Not because Iris said anything, she didn't, but court filings are public record. Ridgeline's lawsuit named the Cedar Lake property by parcel number. The neighbors at the lake read the local paper. They talked. By the second week, the story had made its way through the Rotary Club, the church parking lot, and the checkout line at Hanson's Market. Wade called once. "Iris, please, can you ask your lawyer to drop the lis pendens? If the title is cleared, I might be able to negotiate something with Ridgeline. Reduce the penalty. The lis pendens protects my property, Uncle Wade. It stays. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you." She let the sentence sit for a moment. "My grandparents are the ones who set this up," she said quietly. "They chose this. They chose me. So I don't think shame is what they'd feel." He hung up. She set her phone down and looked at the wall. There was a framed photo of Harold on her desk, the one from the summer she was 12, both of them standing by the fence they'd fixed. She left it where it was. Greg didn't contest the trust. Margaret was right. The legal fees alone would have buried him, and the case would go nowhere. An irrevocable trust established by mentally competent grantors, witnessed, notarized properly, and recorded years before their deaths is about as airtight as state law gets. Instead, Greg did what he should have done 2 years earlier. He sold the building supply store at a loss, but enough to negotiate a repayment plan with the bank. The house stayed. Barely. The savings didn't. Denise went back to work for the first time in a decade. A position at a pharmacy on Lincoln Avenue, the same chain where she'd worked before Kelsey was born. She didn't talk about it much. When neighbors asked, she said she wanted to stay busy. Nobody believed that, but nobody pushed. The town knew. Not every detail, but enough. Harold Tremaine's sons had tried to sell his cabin. His granddaughter had stopped them. That was the version circulating at the diner, at PTA meetings, at the gas station on Route 12. Some people thought she was brave. Some thought she was cold. She didn't correct either group. Greg and Iris didn't speak for 2 weeks after that morning. The house was quiet in a way that felt permanent, like the silence had weight. Nora Beckett brought pie one afternoon. Apple, still warm. "Your parents made their choices," she said, setting the tin on Iris's desk. "But they're still your parents. Don't carry their shame. That's theirs." Then Kelsey called, one evening from a friend's house, voice small. "Iris?" "Yeah? I don't understand everything that happened, but I'm sorry they put you through this." Her throat tightened. "Thanks, Kels. Are you okay?" Iris drove to the cabin on a Saturday morning in late April. The dogwoods along the lake road were blooming, white and pale pink against the dark water. She unlocked the front door with the same key Harold had given her when she was 14. "In case you ever need to get in when we're not here," he'd said. She didn't know then that he meant permanently. The cabin smelled the same, pine and old books, and that sweet, faint something she'd never been able to name. She thought now it might be the wood itself, decades of sun and rain soaked into the walls. She walked through every room. Harold's kitchen table, still solid, still level. Vivian's bookshelves, organized by color. The bedroom where Vivian read to her when she was small. The porch where they watched the lake turn gold. In the desk drawer by the window, she found an envelope, her name on the front in Harold's handwriting. Margaret had told her it would be there. She'd been saving it for after the trust was settled. She opened it carefully. A single page, blue ink. His handwriting getting looser toward the bottom, the way it always did when he was tired. He told her he knew his sons would try to sell the cabin. He didn't blame them. Greg was his boy, and he loved him. But Greg had never understood the difference between something that has value and something that's valuable.
He said he chose her not because she was perfect, but because she was the one who asked whether the roof needed patching before she ever asked what the place was worth. The last line read, "Take care of it. It took care of you first."
She folded the letter. She sat on the porch. She breathed. Margaret called the following week. Good news. The lis pendens can be withdrawn now that there's no active threat to the title.
Once it's cleared, the property record will show the trust as sole owner. Clean. No encumbrances. No clouds. And Wade, he settled with Ridgeline, paid the $45,000 penalty out of a personal loan. The deal is dead. As for the forged notary stamp, the district attorney's office is reviewing the case. He could face a misdemeanor, possibly a felony, depending on how the investigation goes. His license is suspended indefinitely. He can petition for reinstatement, but not while there's an active criminal referral. Iris sat with that for a moment. She didn't feel satisfaction. She felt the kind of exhaustion that comes after a long illness. Not sick anymore, but not quite well either. "There's one more thing," Margaret said. "In the trust documents, your grandparents designated a separate educational fund, $50,000, earmarked specifically for your college expenses. It's been accruing interest for 6 years. The current balance is just over $58,000. Iris's eyes stung. $50,000, the same number Greg had offered as her share of the sale, the same number Wade had dangled like a bribe. Her grandparents had already set it aside quietly, years before any of this, without telling anyone. "Iris, are you there?" "Yeah." Her voice cracked, just barely. "I'm here. Your grandparents would be proud. I just kept a promise, Margaret." She enrolled at Ridgemont Community College that week, environmental science with a minor in forestry. The campus was 20 minutes from the cabin, closer than her parents' house. She filled out the housing forms. Under current address, she wrote the cabin's address for the first time. It felt like coming home, because it was. Part 14, Neutral Ground. She asked Greg and Denise to meet her at the coffee shop on Birch Street. Neutral ground, not the house, not the cabin. Somewhere public, somewhere calm. They arrived together. Greg was wearing a flannel she hadn't seen in years, one of Harold's. Denise clutched her purse tight against her side the way she always did when she was nervous. They ordered. She waited until the cups were on the table. "I love you," she said. "Both of you. I need you to know that, because what I'm about to say might not sound like it." Denise's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "The cabin is not for sale. Not now, not ever. I won't be made to feel guilty for keeping a promise I made to Grandma, a promise she trusted me to keep because she didn't think anyone else would." Greg stared into his coffee. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," she continued. "But if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be built on respect, not on what I can give you financially, not on guilt, not on the idea that I owe you something because you're my parents." Denise started to speak. "We just wanted what was best." "Then start by being honest about what happened. You tried to sell something that wasn't yours. You threatened to kick me out. You went through my bag." She closed her mouth. Greg still hadn't looked up. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it today." She stood. She left enough cash for all 3 coffees. "I'll call you Sunday." He nodded. One small nod. She walked out into the sunlight. It was the most she could hope for right now. Kelsey showed up at the cabin on a Sunday afternoon in May, carrying a pizza box and wearing the oversized hoodie she'd had since 8th grade. "I brought lunch," she said. "Hope you like pepperoni." "Always."
They sat on the porch with paper plates on their laps and the pizza box between them. The lake was still. A heron stood in the shallows near the dock, perfectly motionless, waiting for something below the surface. Kelsey ate slowly. She wasn't there for pizza. "I didn't know about any of it," she said finally. "Mom and Dad never told me." "I know. Was I part of the problem?" Iris looked at her, 15 years old, thin-shouldered, still growing into whoever she'd become.
She didn't choose any of this. She didn't ask to be the favorite. She didn't know the attention they gave her was taken from somewhere else. You were a kid, Kelsey. We both were.
Kelsey nodded, pulled a piece of cheese off her slice, and set it on the edge of her plate. "It's really beautiful here," she said, looking out at the water. "Grandma used to say the same thing every single time she sat in that chair."
Kelsey glanced at the empty chair beside Iris, the one with the armrest Harold had sanded smooth. "Can I come back sometimes?" "Any time." She leaned her head against Iris's shoulder for just a moment. Then she sat up and took another bite. They didn't talk about their parents. They didn't talk about trusts or lawsuits or forged documents. They talked about Kelsey's school project, about the heron, about whether the dock needed new planks that summer. The cabin didn't just protect property, it made space for something new to start. Early June. The porch, a cup of coffee, the mist lifted off Cedar Lake. The pines stood sharp against a pale sky. A loon called somewhere out on the water. 2 long notes, then silence. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the people who are supposed to protect you. You don't get a trophy for surviving something that should never have happened in the first place. But Iris Tremaine kept a promise, and for the first time in her life, she was standing somewhere that belonged to her. Not because she fought for it, but because 2 people loved her enough to plan for exactly this. They saw the storm before she did. They built the shelter before she knew she'd need one. They couldn't stop her parents from being who they were. They couldn't make Greg less desperate or Denise less afraid. They couldn't keep Wade from chasing money that wasn't his, but they could make sure she had ground to stand on. She thought about Harold's letter, about the difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. This cabin had both, but only one of them could be measured, and her family spent 2 years focused on the wrong one. If you're watching this and you feel like nobody's in your corner, hear this. Sometimes the people who protect you aren't standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. And sometimes all you have to do is show up, sign the paper, and keep the promise. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing on something solid and knowing you built your life on it. That's her story. Now here's our question for you. If you could protect one thing in your life, a place, a person, a promise, what would it be? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.
If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to have you here for the next one.